Together. My name is Taylor.
And my name's Samantha.
And we are sisters, and we're very glad that you guys were able to tune in with us. This episode, we just kind of wanted to do a quick introduction of ourselves, give you guys some sort of backstory, where we're from, who we are, and why we wanted to start this podcast. So my backstory is I'm a youth pastor. I have been at Eagle Church in Snow Hill, Maryland for about 8 years. I have been a youth pastor for 3. And I work in women's ministry. I work in youth ministry. I have been all over the place, up, down, left, right. Any ministry you can think of, I think I've probably been about.
And so I am with Snow Hill Mennonite Church, and I work with a lot of the kids there and do children's ministry. And yeah, so that's been basically my area of criteria, or whatever you want to call it, for about 2 years now.
And the reason we really wanted to start this podcast is actually, it's a funny story because, so I currently am living in a camper. Get it, the name Christ in the Camper. And one night Samantha had came in and I was working on dishes and I was listening to a podcast of myself and I was like, it sounds weird. I'm kind of struggling with it. And then she came in and I was like, I have a crazy idea and I don't want you to make fun of me. And we had sat there and I was like, I want to start a podcast, but I don't want to do it by myself.
It was really funny, actually, too, because, we were sitting there and talking, and it was like, yeah, we've both tried this on our own in the past before, and just, listening back and trying to make it all fit together, it didn't seem right.
And I think the other, 2 main reasons of why we wanted to start this podcast was because we wanted to get our names out there and show that you can be on 2 different denominations and still get along and still have conversations about biblical things and not end up in, a screaming match. Because especially in today's world, Lord help somebody if they're in 2 different denominations and they don't believe the same thing. But it also was to get our name out there as well, as far as what our goal is and what we want to do. I mean, at least that's my goal. Sam, what are your goals?
I know for me personally, I just want to be able to talk about some of these concepts that not all Christians are ready to talk about, and be able to put my story out there, put my walk out there, get to know and level some more with these Christians that follow the same walk and or can relate to that, to just be able to put my story out there. Taylor, what are your personal future goals for you in your church?
I want to say that my personal goals for me and the church is I would like to expand. I want to get my name out there. I want to minister to other women. I want to minister to other kids. I want to give kids the opportunity that I never did growing up. I want them to be in the church and find God and figure out who what I like to call their God family. I want them to have the opportunities that I never had growing up. Growing up, I never knew who God was. I never was raised in the church. I was always in and out. We were like that holiday family, I feel like, that would go on Christmas and stuff. Then just within the past 12 years is when we really started trying to get back into church. And I feel like with kids nowadays, they're like, what's church? Right. Who's God? Who's this? And I see a lot of that in our youth group, is that they're actually bringing their parents to church. Mm-hmm. I mean, for you, Sam, that's kind of like your bus ministry. How does that go down?
Right. So basically, we go out and we invite all of the neighborhood kids to be able to come into the church. And, we'll have a little bit of singing and we'll talk about a Bible story, read the Bible together. We'll have prayer, and we just connect with the kids there on a weekly basis. And I know they have a lot of fun out there. But I mean, even this past week, we had two of our sets of kids that come bring their parents, which was really awesome to see, because we don't always see that. And for them to bring their parents, it was like, wow, these kids are really wanting to see that change that they've felt in their lives since they've been coming in their parents.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a lot. I'm going to say that's at least half of our youth group has done that, is really brought their parents to God. And I think that's so crazy. Right. beforehand you would have parents dragging kids to church, like, get up, get ready for church.
Right.
Now it's actually the other way around, where kids
Mm-hmm.
are begging their parents to get to church, and I think that's amazing. But I think that's something that you and I share in common too, is that we
Yeah.
want to see kids coming back to Christ, and it just amazes me.
Right.
And I think that at the end of the day, that it's honestly going to be the kids
Mm-hmm.
bringing their parents to church.
Right. And another thing to think about, I mean, this generation, we're not always going to have that first generation in the church. It will eventually pass away. And we have to think about who we are building up, who we are teaching to lead the church one day. And that is these kids.
I heard a saying, I don't remember who said it, but I heard it years back, and it was that there wouldn't be a church without children.
Right.
And sometimes we forget that we actually are children of God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that amazes me, because that has always been one of my goals, is to bring kids to church. I mean, I've always been for kids. I've
Right.
always loved teaching them. Babies. I mean, I'm a part-time nanny.
Right.
And I think that's just crazy. And I feel like us, I mean, we come from a pretty decently sized family. We've always
Mm-hmm.
had younger kids running around, so
Right.
that's really contributed to it a lot. But I think that that's something that we share in both of us, is that we want kids to come to God.
Right. And I mean, even with our younger siblings, just watching how much joy they have when it comes to, singing those praise songs and, sitting there and going to church and even just playing with some of the other kids. Like, you can see that they have that joy and that happiness to be able to serve the Lord coming in the future, even.
It was so funny, and that you actually bring up those kids songs. I was at work the other day, and the baby that I babysit, his jumper was singing Father Abraham. And I sat there, and it was like one of those like unlocked memories. Like, when you play a video game, you have like an unlocked level.
Right.
It was like one of those unlocked like memories. It was like, oh my goodness, do I know this song? And I just randomly started singing Father Abraham. And the entire rest of the day, and it was so funny because that night we had ladies group, and I was ministering, I was teaching that night. And I always get a little bit nervous right before I start teaching, it's kind of like the jitters.
Right.
And Riley was right next to me, my god sister, and I'm going in here, Father Abraham and many sons, and she goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm doing great. I'm just go with it." But at the end of the day, God's ministry should be nothing but love.
Right.
And I feel that we are a great example of two different denominations,
Right.
where we can have full-on conversations and not bite each other's heads off about things. And I think for this podcast, I think that we're going to be able to show people that.
Right, and we're going to be able to talk about some of these things that, not everybody may see eye to eye on. Taylor and I, we don't even always see eye to eye on things. But we can come to a common ground in certain topics. And, it's okay for other Christians and denominations to not always agree on everything, because that's not how we're made. We're not made to be perfect and think all exactly the same. But that's why we're having this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's going to show people that I can get along with other Christians and not have a full-blown fight.
Right.
Or, hey, let's sit down and have a Bible study and see what the Bible says and come to a conclusion.
Right.
And I think that's what we want with this podcast. But we are coming to a close tonight, and we would like you guys that if you could go ahead and send us some questions in that you guys have for us, some questions about ourselves, or even some biblical questions, because I mean, we always have questions about the Bible that we're always too scared to ask.
Right.
And we're always too scared to ask about other denominations and what they believe in. But go ahead and send us some comments, or send us a message asking some questions and going on. But we just wanted to say thank you guys so much for coming into the podcast and listening to us tonight. And we will hit you guys up later.